when we were in LA, we got told one day, hey, you got to come to sound check. And just, they were kind of being secretive about it. I don't remember what they actually
Okay.
said, but it was like, okay, what's up with all these secrets? And next thing you know, we're in Staples Center at the time. This arena in LA was called Staples Center,
Right.
and the whole arena was completely emptied. They didn't let any crew from the local LA crew in. It was just us on stage. And the next thing you know, Eminem walks into our rehearsal. And so they were keeping it super secret because they didn't want anybody to know that Eminem was going to
Right.
perform with us that night, including us in the band. I was like, hey, you could have given me a heads up.
Hello, you beautiful musicians, and welcome back to the Musician Guidance Podcast. If you're new around here, my name's Mac. I'm the founder of Musician Guidance and podcast host. Today, I'm joined alongside a professional keyboard player, EDM producer, and meditation teacher. Throughout his impressive career, he has toured and performed with Rihanna, Lady Gaga, Eminem, Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, and many more of your favorite artists, as well as performed on the MTV Video Music Awards and The Tonight Show. Without further ado, Kevin Hastings, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thank you. Yeah, just so you know, I also go by the artist name Oneno.
Yes.
So Kevin Hastings and Oneno, that's like my artist side of my brand.
Awesome.
But
Yeah.
yeah, man, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's been quite a journey throughout my career, so I'm happy to jump in here and share whatever I can.
Awesome. And I'm excited to hear whatever you can because
Yeah.
I know you have a lot of experience. And also, I genuinely love what you're doing. I know before I clicked record, you were talking about the Dangerous Truth series you do. And I just think that
Hmm.
really resonates with what we're doing and how honest you are.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to really connect with our audience. So, again, thank you for your time. And I'm super excited to chat with you, learn from all your experience, and also help our community out too. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
awesome. And before we get into all that though, tell me a little bit more about your story and how you got into music.
Oh man. Well, music in general has been a lifelong journey for me. My dad was a theater arts major, an orchestral major,
Okay.
and then he went on to be a music pastor in the church. And so my youth was just music, music, music all day, every day. And just one story I always love to share with people to kind of give a picture into my youth. When I was real young, maybe around 5, 7, or 5 or 8, somewhere in there,
Right.
my dad, one day he sat me down while we were watching Star Wars and he pulled out the John Williams orchestra score. And while the movie was going on in the background, he was with his finger showing me the music on paper and just teaching me how to hear, telling me what a French horn sounds like.
Wow.
This is what a trumpet sounds like. This is a violin or a viola. And so my youth was just really deep in music education.
Okay.
And then I got the experience side of, by the time I reached middle school or even high school, I was always performing in the church, kind of doing the worship services every Sunday. And so that gave me this deep background of music education and performance all through my youth. And yeah, so then by about the age of 18, 19, I moved to Los Angeles
Mhm.
and I went to this music school called Musicians Institute. And I got a scholarship to go there. And after 6 months there, I was doing a bunch of auditions my whole time there. And after 6 months of being in LA, I got the opportunity to audition for this artist named Liz Fair, who back in, this was around 2005, I think it
Okay.
was. And some people out there might recognize Liz Fair from the song Why Can't I? She had the song Why Can't I Breathe Whenever I Think About You? And
Right.
so I got the opportunity to tour with her, and she was my first professional touring gig. And immediately we hit the Ellen DeGeneres show. We were on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we did an episode of the show called Charmed on WB. And then we launched a 4 month long tour, and that took us all over the US and Canada. And it was such an amazing experience. And then from there, I started growing my network. And The next year in 2006, I got the opportunity to tour with this young artist at the time named Cheyenne Kimball. And she was kind of like if people remember Ashley Simpson, how she was
Okay.
doing like reality show and music,
Hmm.
Cheyenne was just after Ashley Simpson. They were trying to do the same thing. And that was a fun year. It took us on to TRL and a few other amazing shows. And then the following year in 2007, I got a phone call one morning from this guy named Tony who said, "Hey, man, I got your name from so and so, and we think you're going to be perfect for this gig. Do you want to come down on audition? The artist name is Rihanna." And at that time, literally, I got the song Umbrella to learn to audition for
Right.
or with, and that hadn't even hit the radio yet.
Wow.
So next thing you know, after I get off the phone with this guy, I'm in my room practicing this song with Jay-Z on it and Rihanna, and it was obviously an amazing excuse me, an amazing song.
Right.
And then I went down to the audition that night and they offered me the gig and I started the next day. And then about 3 weeks later, we were in the UK doing our first round of festivals, and it was wild. I love to tell this part of the story where this was early in 2007, maybe around May.
Okay.
And we went over to the UK and we played a bunch of different festivals, but we played only 6 songs and we played the like 3 p.m. slots.
Okay.
And that was the beginning of 2007. At the very end of 2007, we were doing an arena headlining tour all across
That's
Europe.
awesome.
And
Wow.
in December, we filmed her live DVD performance at the O2 Arena. I think it was in Manchester, and there was 15,000 people in a sold out arena. So it was like
Unbelievable.
a rocket ship to the moon, you know? And so
Everything.
that was
Yeah.
the next 4 years of my life was working with her. And by working with her, I got to work with artists like Jay-Z, Chris Brown, Neo, Kanye. Well, we didn't work with Kanye. We toured with Kanye.
Okay.
Um, and it was wild. It was just wild. And then after that, I wanted to become more of a producer.
Hmm.
So I made the decision to move on from that gig and I got myself my own studio space in Los Angeles. And I just started grinding all the time. I would go to my studio for 14 hours every day and just started teaching myself how to use Ableton. I was coming out of Logic at that time.
Okay.
And I also used to work in Reason. One of my very first endorsements was actually from Reason.
Oh, right on.
So they have a soft spot in my heart. But eventually I got into Ableton and that really revolutionized my ability to make music. And starting around 2012, I started releasing my own music. I released a bunch of stuff when I was younger too, but this was, a new level of
Sure. Sure.
professionalism.
Oh, yeah.
And then around 2015, man, I'm just like skipping over so many things, but around 2015, I had just finished going through a yoga teacher training, and yoga and meditation became very important to me.
Hmm.
And I decided to rebrand myself as Oneno right around that time. And I got the opportunity to tour with Miguel right around this time. And then, so I've just been putting out my own music under the Oneno brand ever since then. And around 2020, I got one of my favorite placements that I've ever had in this video game called Cyberpunk 2077.
Right.
And it's this song called Makes Me Feel Better, and they actually accepted this song from me in 2017. And it wasn't until 2020 that the game finally came out. But
Oh, wow.
1 month before the game, they dropped their latest trailer, their final trailer for the game. And I had no idea that they were going to use my song as the title track when
That's
they
awesome.
flashed the video game
Yeah.
title right at the end of it. And so next thing you know, there was like 35 million views on that trailer.
Wow.
And the game launched, and the if you followed that game at all, it had a bit of a rocky launch, but the fans have been so freaking cool and just so supportive and so interested in the music that I make. And so it's been a really interesting and cool journey to go from growing up in Oregon, playing mostly in the church, eventually in LA,
Yeah.
touring a lot, and then deciding to take this leap of faith and move on from my touring life. And now I'm in my artist journey, you know?
Yeah. 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 No, that's awesome. I
So
appreciate you
it's been
sharing all
wild.
that.
Yeah,
It
totally.
sounds like it. Yeah. One thing I always love is to hear about the journey because we always hear about the success, right? But
Oh, yeah.
everybody is going through that journey and that grind. And when you went to, university, and I think you said it took 6 months to get that first like gig, can you
Yeah.
walk me through like that grind basically? Because that's what so many people are
Yeah.
doing right now. And I'd just love to hear about yours.
Well, my grind, I think, is it goes back before LA
Okay.
because by all measures, 6 months in LA and then you get your first professional gig is very unheard of. But I think there was a few key things that set me up for that type of success.
Okay.
The first was obviously my dad and both of my parents, because my mom's also a musician too. So
Okay.
growing up with deep music education, and then I was a classically trained piano player, and I got the experience to be able to perform in church week after week after
Mhm.
week. So that was really a major part of my grind. And I gotta say, I'm super grateful that when I was in high school, I didn't have an iPhone, I didn't have social media. I would
Right.
spend a minimum of 4 to 6 hours every day just practicing piano. And that was my love. I genuinely cannot get enough of it. And I loved this idea that I could sit down with a piece of paper that Beethoven had written this music that has been captured on paper and locked in a timeless state, and that if I could practice it enough and learn it, I could literally make my hands do what Beethoven did, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to hear the music that would come out of that, it was just one of my favorite experiences in my younger life. And
Right.
so I think my youth being so focused on classical piano and deep music education and performance, by the time I moved to LA, I had a almost 10,000 hours of experience, you know. By the time I was 18, I had, I don't know if it was a full 10,000 hours, maybe 7, 8,000 hours of
Right.
practice and performance and really doing it. Not to mention all the rock bands and stuff that me and my brother and other friends had done in high school, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then I think specifically what set me up for success by the time I got to LA was it was this perfect convergence of me being a keyboard player where keyboards in LA, especially at that time, I don't know if it's different now, it was a very rare instrument. Everybody wanted to be guitar players, everybody wanted to be
Interesting.
drummers.
Right.
And so keyboards and bass were kind of the two instruments that had a lot less competition.
Right.
And then beyond that, I've always loved technology and I see technology as an extension of being an instrument. You know, it is a whole new form of being an instrument.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so at that time, I was getting into Reason, and that was helping me learn how to use samples live, how to program synths live. And so it was my ability to adapt technology as another instrument that kind of additionally set me up for success.
Right.
Because by the time I got the Rihanna gig, what I would get when we would have to learn a new song for our show is I would just get an MP3. They say, you know, here's Umbrella, and then I
Seriously.
you gotta learn how to not just play it, but I gotta program my keyboards to sound like that record.
Right.
And
Right.
so I get zero help from the production side of
That's
things.
crazy.
And so that kind of threw me in the deep end and kind of gave me my love for sound design and kind of learning how to reverse engineer
Mhm.
sounds.
Did
Excuse
they at
me. And
least
so
give you a decent amount of time to learn that and to
oh
do
no,
that?
man.
No.
No. No. Usually you get like a day, you know?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, luckily my ear by that point was high quality enough to be able to learn how to play the parts really fast.
Mhm.
And then, you know, the older I got, the faster I could program sounds.
Right.
But yeah, in the very beginning, it was just super DIY and basic. But that really kind of locked me into a very niche part of the touring music industry. Because
Mhm.
before that, when you go a little bit before my time in LA, when you go back to early 2000s and a little bit before, typically you'd have a keyboard player and then you'd have a keyboard programmer as a whole separate job.
Okay. Right.
And
Right.
so that guy would be responsible for helping design the sounds and getting you close. And so then I come in and, I can do 2 jobs
Mhm.
for 1 paycheck, and what
Right.
suit is not gonna love that? So
No, no,
so yeah, it
exactly.
was kinda this perfect mixture of me being a keyboard player and having the childhood that I had that kinda set me up for the talent, but then having that being a keyboard player would just meant that I didn't have a lot of competition,
Mhm.
um, and so I think it was some of those elements that really helped me succeed as quickly as I did.
That's very cool, very insightful, and it's just I find that so crazy how a day to do all that? That's unbelievable, that's all new to
Oh,
me.
yeah. Yeah, it was
That's
always very fast.
That's nuts. But that's awesome too. So you did that grind, and then you got these gigs, one kind of led to the other, kind of snowballed there. How crazy was your life? And can you just describe like when you were touring with these, the biggest and brightest in different countries, going on all these shows? What was that like? Like, can you just walk
Oh,
me through like a
man.
day in the life in that kind of?
Oh, bro, it was wild. It's wild. It's like living a movie, you know?
Right,
It you every day, especially when you're on tour and you have a tour bus and you're kind of in the official tour grind,
right.
typically you wake up on the tour bus and, man, my sleep schedule was so messed up during this part of
I
my life.
bet.
I'd wake up at, like, noon or 2 p.m., roll in, do sound check. The crew had been setting up the arena all
Mhm.
morning, and then we roll in about 3 o'clock, and we'll do a quick sound check, and then take a break. Eventually, there's dinner, or if you want to leave the venue and go look at some sights or something, and then come back. And the show would usually start sometime around 7 or 8, and then we'd hit the stage usually around like 9 or 10, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And then, yeah, when we were in full tour mode, we'd perform for about 90 minutes. Sometimes it'd go a little bit more.
Right.
And then after the show, sometimes it'd just be straight back to the bus. Sometimes there'd be after party, but the energy is just always super high. So I wouldn't get to sleep until 2 or 3 a.m. And then you just do that every day, and
Well,
it's so
yeah.
much fun, and you never know who's gonna be there. Like, when we'd roll into New York and we play Madison Square Garden, all of a sudden it's like this, collage of celebrities, of actors and musicians and just all these people coming through. You're like, "Oh, man, that's freaking, Jay-Z just standing there with Beyoncé, sure." Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just crazy the people that were around that gig.
Yeah.
But the shows themselves were my favorite part. Just being on stage in front of that many people. For me, it's an energy thing. I'm an empath. I don't know if you know
Okay.
what that means, but I feel energy from individuals and from
Right.
groups of people very deeply. And so the energy that would be generated inside of these arenas when everybody's just on this high and feeling so uplifted and positive by the music that we're providing,
Mhm.
that was the number one experience that I think I was the most addicted to,
Right.
was just experiencing, being able to generate the sound that is getting this whole arena to go wild. And, I'll share one story that kind of encompasses some of the most wild
Sure.
stuff I experienced.
Let's hear it.
So it was late, I think this was around 2009, 2010, and we were on tour in Europe, and one day, Rihanna has to go to the studio, and she's recording the song "Love the Way You Lie" with Eminem.
Mhm.
And so she goes into the studio, throws down her vocals really quick, and then comes back and we play our show, and time goes on. About 2 weeks later, that song is released. So it was a really quick. She recorded her vocals and then it
Wow.
like immediately hit the radio. And then it blew up. It just immediately went to number 1. Everybody loved that song. And then after that tour, we went back to LA. And so, well, we did a US tour. And when we were in LA, we got told one day, "Hey, you gotta come to sound check," and, just they were kinda being secretive about it. I don't remember what they actually
Okay.
said, but it was like, "Okay, what's up with all these secrets?" And next thing you know, we're in Staples Center. At the time, this arena in LA was called Staples Center,
Right.
and the whole arena was completely emptied. They didn't let any crew from the local LA crew in. it was just us on stage. And the next thing you know, Eminem walks into our rehearsal. And so they were keeping it super secret because they didn't want anybody to know that Eminem was going to
Right.
perform with us that night, including us in the band. I was like, hey, you could have given me a heads up. So we did the rehearsal, and then later for that part of the in the show, it was during our encore. So we just it was actually the last song before the encore. So
Okay.
we play this song, and it starts with just me on the piano and Rihanna singing. And typically, what we would do when Eminem didn't perform with us is I would start, she'd sing, we'd do, I think, like verse, chorus, and then it was over. But this night we did the whole song. And so I start the piano, she starts singing, and then right when Eminem launches into his vocal, he pops up from this trap door in the center of the stage. And
Okay.
all of a sudden he's just like, bam, there's Eminem right in the center of the stage. And the whole arena of, I think it's 10,000 or so people, just lost their minds. And they were screaming so loud that we wear these what's called in-ear monitors.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of they kind of act like earplugs as well as letting you hear your instrument and the
Right.
mix and everything. But the screaming of the audience was so loud that I could barely hear anything. Of all the shows that I've played, I've never felt something like that before or after.
Right.
And so then we finish that song and we walk off stage while we're waiting to do the encore, and the crowd's going wild. And I remember I actually started crying just because I was so overwhelmed. And I was like, I was very much aware that I was in a moment that I would never experience again. And I was
Never
just
forget. Yeah.
never forget it. And then we came back out and we played a few more and finished with Umbrella, and it was just such a wild, wild show.
That's crazy that they didn't even tell you, hey, in the band?
No, I
Like,
know.
I get they didn't want it getting out at all, is that why?
Yeah, yep, they didn't want anyone to know. They didn't want an accidental tweet or
Right.
Instagram post or anything, you know?
That's
So,
crazy.
it was nuts. It was
That
really
is.
nuts.
Well, I appreciate that story. I love to hear stuff like that, and I'll even get you to dive into maybe a little more right now because I know you're an
Yeah.
honest guy. I see it on your Instagram page, and as you just shared there, and looking at the other side of it. So secrets, but maybe ones that what I'll call schemes or maybe lies that the industry is kind of pushing out there. I know one
Mhm.
of the dangerous truths you did was I think it was I want to say Rihanna concert where while she was doing one of her costume changes, that there was
Mhm.
this like video going and it was saying like, you are the consumer, you are the
Yeah.
consumer, you are the
Mhm.
consumer, right? So I just love to hear kind of some of the other like that you can share, like the biggest just lies and schemes that you kind of saw happening that
Sure,
yeah,
yeah. Well, just to share that story, and then I'll share another one too.
sure.
But the story you're bringing up was when we went back out on the tour for the Rated R album. That was by that time of working with Rihanna, there was nobody else on the planet like her at that point with her success.
Right,
She's
right.
number one. She's had a bazillion number ones. And so that really attracted in some of the biggest players in the industry to be in control of her show.
Okay.
And so this was kind of where I first started becoming aware of the fact that there is manipulation, the power of suggestion, kind of subconscious mind programming that goes on in this
Hmm.
world of popular mainstream music. And yeah, there was this part of our show where we would do a scene change. And so what would happen is we'd finish a song, everything would go dark. We had this massive video wall at the back of the stage, and they started playing this visual. There was kind of like these dreamlike sounds, and the visual was Rihanna, I believe, in a white dress against a
Okay.
red velvet background, and there was like rose petals falling, and she was just kind of spinning in this dreamlike fashion. And then there was a male, I think British vocal that just said for almost 60 seconds straight, "You are the consumer. You are the consumer."
That's
And it just went
crazy.
on and on. And I remember that me and some of the band guys, we would chat about this because, for us, we're watching it from the rehearsal phase all the way into the performance, and we're doing it night after night after night. And so I remember thinking at the time that it was disrespectful to the audience to
Hmm.
just label the audience a consumer. And I just thought it was weird and I didn't understand the motivation behind it.
Right.
And it felt manipulative to me.
Hmm.
And, just to label people a consumer or give them some sort of subconscious suggestion to go buy some merch or like buy some more stuff.
Right.
So that was one thing that definitely stuck out on the tour. Um, Another story that I made at another Dangerous Truths on my Instagram, which I believe is called, I think the dangerous truth is that the music industry primarily supports low vibrational music.
I saw
And the
that.
story I share in that one came from my first year touring with Rihanna, where this was around 2007. And we were doing a bunch of what's called radio shows, where you have a whole array of pop artists come in and play like a 1 day festival.
Okay.
And so there's like, 8 or 9 famous names on the bill. And this year was the year that Soldier Boy was becoming super popular. And he had that song where the hook was Superman That Hoe. And I just remember being like, why is it that the labels and the suits at the top of these labels will invest so much money into music that is very low vibrational, just has no real benefit to the lyrics? It doesn't really lift you up. It just kind of
Right.
keeps you in this low party mode and kind of even derogatory state of mind. And I remember being in this auditorium watching 10,000 or so people sing along and dance along to Superman That Hoe. And I was just like, why? Why is that? And that question just kept coming up in my brain. And over the years, as I've gotten older and I've seen more in the industry, I've come to the conclusion that I think it's all very much on purpose, that there's people in the industry that understand the power of music and they know that they can use music to keep people in kind of a lower state of consciousness and subconsciously program them in any way that they want. And I
Hmm.
think typically they subconsciously program people into being consumers, into being the buyers of products. They're master advertisers and they want you to give them your money. That's what they're really after. But I also think that there's a form of social control, social engineering that these people are aware of and will also primarily support music that they can use to their benefit like that. And so they're not really interested in signing really uplifting music that lifts you out of your depression or lifts you up above, the social conditioning that we're usually imbued with. Um, and I find that to be really unfortunate. I don't know why that is, but I do know that I've seen it. And so that's part of what, by the end of my time in LA, what started leading me out of that industry. And I just started becoming aware of what that game was. And I just didn't really want to participate in that anymore. And that's what began the journey of me becoming my own producer and artist and wanting to generate music that would uplift people and
Hmm.
will make people, think a little deeper than, look at what's popular right now on SoundCloud. There's a lot of mumble rap, as people call it, that's, just kind of keeping people in this state of singing about Xanax and popping pills and getting drunk and messing around with girls. And,
Yep.
it's really low vibrational music. And I think that's really unfortunate. But I also love the timeline that we're in now, where music is far less controlled than it used to be.
Oh
It
yeah.
used to be that you couldn't even make an album without being signed because you
Hmm.
didn't have the ability to pay 100 grand to go into a studio for 6 months and record. But now we all have our own laptops. We all have our own home studios. You can upload immediately to Spotify or SoundCloud or iTunes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it makes it hard because everybody has the ability to do that. But it also means that the controllers, the gatekeepers, have far less control over what actually gets out into the world these days. So I
Yeah,
find that to be very optimistic.
yeah, it's almost like the devil in the sheep's clothing, kind of like there's so many great things about it, and it empowers the artist, as you said. They can upload something on TikTok, right? They can just
Yeah,
upload their music there, but at the same time, there was a report put out the other day now that it's up to 100,000 songs now are uploaded to Spotify a day, and like
a
there are
day.
a day now. That's the new report,
Wow,
and
wow.
a lot of them too are 60-second song clips, right? And some people, protesting against Spotify's payout and all that.
Yeah,
Some of them are also, there are services now, which I'm not sure if you know of, where you can get artificial intelligence to create you a song in seconds like that. And then you can upload it to Spotify right away. So
wow.
like social media is great, but at the same time, this technology is also allowing people creating music for the wrong reasons
Oh
to
yeah.
kind of saturate the market.
Yeah,
And
and there was a story, what, just a few months ago about the first artificially intelligent artist that was signed to a label. Did
yes,
you read that
yes.
story?
I didn't read it. I heard about it briefly, but
Yeah, yeah, I can't remember the name, but it was also weird because, like, that story broke, and then, like, 2 weeks later, they dropped the artist, the
yeah.
quote, unquote, "artist" for using the N-word or something like that.
I
I
didn't
was
know
like,
that. Oh my.
"Oh, yeah, that was another headline," and I was like, "Wait a second, we're now canceling artificial intelligence." It's like, what timeline are we in? That's so wild.
I didn't
But
know that.
one thing I like to kinda interject on this subject, though, is I think what will remain, as we do go into more AI technology, I think what will remain is the live human experience of music.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I think now more than ever, I think it's important for people to learn how to play an instrument, because I think that's one thing that is kind of dying and changing in this current generation, is that it's very somewhat easy to get into learning how to produce in Ableton or whatever your DAW is. And people don't really want to take the time to learn how to play a guitar or learn how to play a keyboard. But I think if you do learn how to do that, you're setting yourself up for a different level of success that
Mm,
might have a bit more longevity than just being a digital music producer.
sure. I
So, because I think that there's something in the human soul that will always resonate with watching somebody play, watching
yeah.
somebody sing, watching a group of people bring music to life, even if they have a computer on stage and
Mhm.
even if there's other technology, human beings are attracted to the human experience. And so there's always going to be a part of us that loves watching another human being do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that will necessarily live on the internet. That will be local, or that will be when you see a big artist come through your local
100%.
arena or something like that.
I totally agree with you. And one thing I say too is the power is not within, right, those people that can upload 100 songs a day, by through artificial intelligence. The power is not within those people that are uploading just mediocre songs to try and go
Yeah.
famous. The power is within like each and every one of us that want to hear true art. And what I like to
Yeah.
say is when the hype goes away, like when the marketing campaigns go away, what stays is the music. And if it's
Yeah.
great enough, people are going to want to listen to it.
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, I think Adele is an amazing example of
Oh yeah.
that, because we live in a time where most music is digital produced. There's a lot of, samples going on and blah blah
Mhm.
blah, but then all of a sudden Adele is the largest artist whenever she releases a song, and it's like, how is that?
Right.
And my philosophy on that is that I think as we move into a time that we're already in, where social media and everything can be so manipulated so easily, that I think our souls start to crave authenticity. And
Oh
so I
yeah.
think authenticity is actually one of the biggest secrets of our current timeline. Because whether you're a musician or just a content creator, if you're trying to make a YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever, the more authentically you that you can be, the more people are going to resonate with that, because everything is curated now. Everything is trying to be polished. And so if they see someone Like me, I find myself to be very articulate, but sometimes I stutter on my words or I get things quite, not in the right order or something. But instead of editing that out, just allow yourself to be that on camera.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to show your real self to your audience, and people are going to resonate because they're used to everything being so polished that all of a sudden they just say, if even on a subconscious level, like, oh, this guy is real. I
Hmm.
can tell he's just an authentic person.
And that's
So I
something I'm
think
trying
that's
to
the
get better at.
currency of the timeline that we're in. Yeah.
Definitely. And because I mean, when I started this podcast, I'd be editing out all my uhs and ums
Yep.
and I actually had people reach out to me saying, "Why are you doing that? We like to hear
Yeah.
that." It's yeah. So I
It's
couldn't.
true.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
I think it's totally true. And the more you can just embrace that, I think you'll naturally get a little bit better, even
Hmm.
where you don't, if you do say or you mess up a word or something, it won't wreck your train of thought. You'll
Exactly.
be able to move forward. And I think that's all that really people care about, whether it's stuttering over a word or playing a wrong note on stage in front of 10,000 people. Nobody really knows if you made a mistake until you kind of announce it. If you say like, "Oh, man, I totally messed up right there," or if
Yeah.
I'm on stage and I just, like, stop playing,
Yeah.
then they're gonna be like, "Oh, something's really wrong,"
Yeah.
and then they cringe. But if you just keep moving forward, I find people to be rather forgiving more than critical,
Hmm.
in that regard. They want I think that people really want to see someone succeed. Like, we love to tear people down. That's a definite part of human consciousness.
Hmm.
But I also think that we love to see somebody succeed. We love to see somebody do something that we don't necessarily think we're capable of, or maybe we wish we were capable of that.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so I think there's this part of us that does kind of root for that. I do think humans are quite critical as well, so don't get me wrong, but
Right.
I do think there's a part of us that's like, yeah, come on, push through. I want to see it. I want to
Yeah.
see you do that.
I also think they like to see people have those little mishaps, not to be critical of them, but because it shows that they're real. Like you see
Yeah,
Harry Styles falling on stage.
right.
I think he's done I don't know how many times through his career now, but people just connect with that, right? Because everybody's
Yeah.
falling down the stairs or something. And it
Yep.
just, yeah, it breaks down that kind of barrier between like, you know, world superstar to
Yeah.
average music listener, just kind of evens it and you connect with them better. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Because it reminds you that they're just a real person.
there you go.
Yep.
Exactly.
Everybody can stumble every once in a while, and then you see yourself in that.
Yeah. And poor Harry has to watch all these compilations now.
Poor guy. Poor
Poor
guy.
guy.
But, at
Yeah.
least it still helps sell tickets and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah. It's crazy. I want to switch gears here a bit because we were talking off camera too. I know you're a meditation teacher,
Yeah.
and meditation is something that I used to play sports very competitively, and
Oh,
meditation is
cool.
something that I tried to incorporate in that. I had
Mhm.
one coach who taught me this one exercise. It was hold a little piece of string, put a
Mhm.
paper clip dangling in the middle, and
Mm.
try and get it to swing just by like focusing on it. And
Mm.
obviously, it's like in theory, it's impossible, but your
Mhm.
mind just thinks you can do it. So you
Right.
focus in on that. And I just love to hear. Do you have some exercises that you could maybe share and those listening at home could implement?
Sure. Yeah, I do. First, I wanna talk just a little bit about why I think meditation is so
Sure.
important. Um, I think that we live in a timeline where we're so overstimulated
Mm.
that we are genuinely afraid of being bored. And so we're always trying to fill our minds, our eyes, our consciousness with things. But the problem with that, especially being a creator, is that the only way that you're really going to hear a creative idea is when you cut all the noise out. And so sitting in silence is actually one of the most creative states of mind that you can be in. Sometimes we think, oh, if I just stay on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, keep scrolling, I'll get my new song idea.
Right.
But no, you really won't. And even if you did, you'll probably forget about it in 5 minutes after you start watching the next video?
Right.
So I think that meditation is such an interesting activity. I like to say that it's the only activity that we promote that is an activity of inactivity.
Mm.
It's something that we quote unquote do where there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so it's this paradox. But it sets you up for, on one level, just being able to be with yourself a little bit more can lead to so much healing in your consciousness. It helped lift me up out of some of the deepest depressions I've ever experienced and got me through some of the roughest times of my life, just as a human.
Hmm.
But then as a creator, really started to notice that the more I would meditate and the more I would try to still my mind, the more I would hear music in my mind.
Okay.
And there was this one day I went on a hike in Sedona, Arizona, and I was out there. And if you've ever been to Sedona, I don't know, but it's
No.
gorgeous. It's
Okay.
absolutely gorgeous. It's insane beauty, these massive red cliffs and mountains and stuff. And it's so quiet. It's just so quiet. All you hear is the wind and your feet in the dirt, and there's just nothing else. And it was during this hike that I had that insight where I was like so deeply tuned into a musical idea that I was amazed that when I'm usually sitting in my studio or back in my house, I'm like, why don't I hear that? Why am I hearing it now that I'm out here on a hike, but I
Hmm.
don't hear that when I'm in my workspace trying to get something done? And so it's kind of that shower effect theory where like you're trying to get a answer or a solution to something. It's not until you take a shower that that idea will finally pop in. And you're like, why
Right.
is that?
Right.
Why does it have to work that way?
Yeah.
So I think meditation is a wonderful tool that we have right at our fingertips at any moment. You can power off your devices and just sit, and it intimidates people because I think that it seems so mysterious. It seems so foreign. And then
Sure.
people have these expectations of what they should be experiencing in meditation. And so our minds are these constant chatterboxes. And so meditation is a tool to try to still that chatterbox. But everybody experiences, especially in their first year or two or three of meditating, that they don't really sit there in silence. It's like their brain is constantly chattering. And so then that makes people feel frustrated.
Okay.
So this
Right.
is where the tools come in. What what really good meditation tools are trying to do is they're trying to give your chattering brain something to do that kind of takes you out of the chatter. So for instance, one of my favorite tools is a meditation technique that I kind of developed based on this thing I was reading in a book. I call it the 12 breath meditation.
Okay.
And basically, so everybody has a hand. Hopefully, somebody has a hand out there. And if you look at your main four fingers, your index, middle, ring, and pinky finger, you have three pads on each finger.
Right.
So you have the top of your finger, the middle of it, and then the base.
Hmm.
So if you take your thumb to the top of your index finger, then that will be breath number one. And so you breathe in and you breathe out. Then you move your thumb to the top of your middle finger. That's breath number two. Top of the ring finger, top of the pinky finger. That's breath number four. And then you go to the middle pads. So
Okay.
now I'm in the middle of my pinky. That's breath five. Middle of the ring finger, middle of the middle finger, middle of the index finger. That's breath eight. And then you go to the base. You just go all the way across. So base
Right.
of the index, base of the middle, base of the ring, and then base of the pinky. And then that's 12 breaths, right? Let me do my math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, just
Or
making
yeah,
sure.
you're
So 12 breaths. So that's one technique that I love to share with people because instead of trying to just jump into the deep end and be like, oh, I got to be Zen for 30 minutes and just like really woo saw it out,
right.
kick it
Right.
all out, maybe don't start there. Maybe start with something that's a bit more attainable.
Sure.
And so I find doing this with my thumb and my fingers a great way to monitor where I am on my meditation. And also, it's very short. So it doesn't have to be this extra long experience.
Mhm.
You can get there, you can grow into that.
Right.
But if it's going to stop you, if it's going to intimidate you to the point where you never sit down and meditate, then my suggestion is to always make it easier, make it more attainable.
Hmm.
And so that's one technique. I think the next technique I would offer would be a different form of a counted breath meditation.
Okay.
And this would be where you breathe in to the count of 6, and then you breathe out to the count of 3. So your in breath is twice as
Slow.
long
Right.
as your exhale, and you're just using your whole chatter brain, you're using your consciousness to focus on counting. And so then you can quickly see if your brain goes off into a to-do list or thinking about that situation or what you got to do tomorrow.
Right.
And so then you can just slowly, continuously bring yourself back into a state of counting instead of a state of thinking.
Yep.
And those tools I find to be very, very helpful. And the more you do them, the more you'll see that your brain has the ability to just focus on that.
Hmm.
And then over time, you start to experience less thoughts. In the beginning, it's still going to be full of thoughts, but you shouldn't judge if you've had a quote unquote good meditation on that. A good meditation is when you sit down and do it.
Right.
That's what a good meditation is.
Hmm.
And then over time, your brain will actually enjoy this experience because it's kind of paradoxical. Our chatter brain likes to always chatter and be in charge, but it also wants relief. It wants peace. It wants to escape itself.
Yep.
And so over time, when your brain realizes that there's this depth and this expansion that you end up feeling when you do step out of the chattering, then your brain starts to work with you. But before that moment in time, before that moment in your practice, your brain's going to fight. And it's going to be like, no, I got stuff to do. I got to
Oh
focus
yeah,
on this
I've
and
been
that.
there.
And like, yeah, dude, we all
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the default state, you know? So when people say, I can't meditate, I just think that that's BS. It just
Hmm.
means that you haven't really given yourself the chance and you're just afraid of your own chattering.
Yep.
And I think that's something that we should reflect on deeper is why am I afraid of my own brain?
Yeah.
I'm so afraid to sit down and hear my own thoughts. Or even why is my brain so hypercritical? Why is my brain always trying to tear me apart?
Yep.
And those are some deep reflections that we'd rather just avoid and scroll and find something to distract us from those thoughts. But I find do the inner work to actually work through those thoughts, the benefits on the other side of that are deep, and it will help heal or get you past a depression or any sort of negative energy or
Hmm.
situations that's going on in your life. It'll really, really
100%.
help.
100%.
And then the last tool and technique would be to find a teacher as well,
Hmm.
because doing it on your own is quite difficult, I think, if especially if you're just starting.
Sure.
But nowadays, there's a lot of great resources. There's apps, there's YouTube videos. I've made a 21-day meditation course that I sell on my website. I've also made, I did a whole year on my YouTube where I did meditation Mondays. And so I have about 50 free meditations up on my YouTube channel that people can
Awesome.
absolutely go check out. Um, but also, if you can, and if you're interested in this, find a teacher that you can sit with physically.
Hmm.
So, like in LA, I would go to this yoga class, and every Monday night, my yoga teacher, Joe, would do his 90-minute yoga class. And then after that, it was a volunteer meditation for another 30 minutes. So you could
Okay.
leave the class if you wanted to,
Right.
or you could stay for another 30 minutes and he would do a meditation. And that's really where I did the bulk of my work and my healing was by doing it there, sitting with Joe in that room with a few other people. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, if you're a total beginner, I definitely recommend getting with a teacher.
Sure.
But there are some tools and techniques that you can pick up like that too.
Yeah. And I wanted you to talk on it too, because I know the importance of it personally. And I remember I was running polls. I'm always running polls, but I was running one on how many people, how many artists in the music industry struggle for mental health. It was
Oh
like
yeah,
70, it was like 70%.
it's
Just an absurd
huge.
number. And it's like they're being beaten down every day by, we talked on it earlier, those manipulation tactics and stuff like
Yeah,
that, and false narratives being placed on them. And so the benefits of it, or I didn't use it for music, but I remember before I'd go to bed, my mind was busier than
oh
it would ever
yeah,
be, right? And
yep,
through going all these through like I said, the paperclip one and a few other ones I did, I was able to go 10 seconds initially without thinking of anything, right? And now
Yeah.
I can go a couple minutes almost. But
Yeah.
at first, I couldn't go half a second, right? So as you
Yeah.
said, it takes time, but the benefits of it are just second to none, in my opinion.
It really is, and I think it is a much larger conversation than just, how to make better music or get ideas. Like this like you said, it's definitely a mental health conversation.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, as far as the artists and mental health and music and stuff, I think that musicians, in order to be a creative person, whether you're a musician or some other type of artist, I think you have to be a very emotionally open person. You
Mhm.
have to feel things very deeply in order to be able to make art, or it's kind of like a chicken and egg,
Yeah.
which one came first. I think it's the people that feel so deeply, they want to channel that into something to help them process it and get it out of their consciousness.
Yeah.
And so I think that meditation is very important for creatives in general, because we're the type of people that just live on kind of a different plane of consciousness that is always feeling things just way deeper.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's an amazing tool. And I think, especially for performing as well,
Yeah.
I noticed that when I was on tour and I'm playing in front of 10,000, 20,000 people, that I was in a meditative state. I never knew it at the time
Okay.
because I didn't grow up with an awareness of meditation. But as I've gotten older and I've learned meditation, I realized that's why I like music so much, is because it completely gets me out of my chatter brain and I can just focus, and I
Right.
can focus on playing these notes and then these notes and then these notes. And I don't have to worry about what I'm doing for breakfast tomorrow or what that girl said to me last night or whatever, you know?
Right.
So that music was always my meditation. And so I think if you have issues like performance anxiety or you stage fright, those type of things, meditation is another incredibly powerful tool to help that part of your creativity, and just learn how to ground yourself and
Mhm.
breathe into your diaphragm. Maybe this is one of the last tips I'd like to give, is that your diaphragm is the muscle that we all use to breathe. It's
Right.
at the base of your lungs, and your diaphragm is directly connected to what's called your parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. And
Okay.
that's
Right.
when, you're frustrated, this person cut you off in traffic, or, the ancient part of us thinks that there's a lion about to attack us or something. So that's your sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. Your parasympathetic nervous system is your cool down response. And it's the part of you that's going to finally start to chemically change the state of your body into a state of relaxation and actually into a state of regeneration, AKA healing. And so your diaphragm is deeply connected to your parasympathetic nervous system. So sometimes just by actually taking a few breaths, even with your eyes open, as deep as you can into your belly, you naturally start to activate the parasympathetic. And so oftentimes when we're tense, we're holding our breath.
Right.
We're mentally stressed out. We're not breathing. We're really shallow breathing. We're taking in minimal air and then letting it back out. Becoming aware, giving yourself the awareness of like, wait, have I taken a deep breath in the last 5 minutes? That is a very powerful meditation as well. To
For
just
sure.
fully relax your belly and breathe as deep into your belly as you can for even 3 to 5 deep breaths, it
Right.
will absolutely start to change your state of energy and the chemical nature of your body as well. So, massive tip right there.
No, I appreciate that. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I guess just to come full circle and kind of conclude this episode here, we've talked about touring, about how you got into music, about meditation and all that. You have an unbelievable amount of experience. And just to encapsulate that all for artists, what are some like do's and don'ts, in the music industry?
Oh man, that's a good
It's a
question
broad
and a
question,
big
but
one. Yeah.
yeah, just if anything comes to mind.
I think the major one that I've wrestled with as far as a don't is don't compare yourself to other people,
Oh yeah.
because art is so should be so unique and original.
Yep.
And so it's hard because we all, especially now, we live in an instant gratification type society and world. We don't want to delay our gratification.
Hmm.
We want it now. So we want to see immediate results.
Yeah.
And we even get advertised all the time for things that deliver immediate results. But the truth is, some of this work, both on the mental health meditation side, but also on being a creative, some of that work just takes time. It takes a long time. And so don't think of yourself as needing to succeed today or tomorrow, or else it's not worth it. You got to really decide, like, is this something that I want to pursue for my life?
Yep.
Because if it isn't, then it's probably not really your bliss. It's probably just you probably just want more attention from girls, or you wish that you had money or a yacht
Hmm.
or something like that.
Yep.
But for me, music was never about money or status or getting girl attention or any of those things. It was genuinely about the state of performance. I love being in that place. I love making music and seeing an audience react to it. And so I think comparing yourself to some other artist's journey where they're at is incredibly detrimental, first to your mental health, and second to your art, because
Yeah.
then you're going to try to replicate them or do what they did or whatever. But like we said earlier in this interview, I think that authenticity is one of the secrets and one of the keys for what will
Yep.
help you succeed. But then here's the problem is that you're not going to find your voice that makes you super unique and original in year one of your journey. It's just not
Bingo.
really
Yep.
usually how it goes. I mean, look, I've been writing music and making music since I was about 15. And I don't think I found my voice until I turned about 30, maybe 30.
Okay.
I'm 36 right now.
Right.
So I always feel like there's more to discover about who I am and what makes me original. And trying to dive into that is something that I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to uncover more of that. Um, and that whole conversation of like, how do you find your voice? Man, that's so difficult. It's so difficult.
Sure is.
But
Yeah.
it's like there is no answer to it other than a direction.
Mhm.
You know when you're pursuing something that you like.
Right.
And you also know when you're pursuing something that somebody else told you was cool or that you saw somebody else do and you thought was cool. So it's a bit of a paradox because as an artist, we're always looking to our influences and we want to incorporate those.
Mhm.
But that's also kind of how you find your voice is it's like, so yeah, I love this type of rock guitar and I love this type of drum groove and I love this type of keyboard sound. But how do I take them and make them mine? And what do I want to do with those tools? Or if it's like a painter, I now have all of these colors, but what am I going to paint with these colors?
Right.
And so if when I was in LA and I was really pursuing writing music for trying to get placements with pop artists and things like that, it ultimately didn't work out for me because I'm just really not that type of guy. Like I said, I like to make music that is different and weird, doesn't really hit the pop mainstream, But what I noticed about LA and the writing world out there is I think there's about 95% of the people are just copying what the 5% of people are doing that's original.
Bingo. Yep.
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 So don't be part of the 95%. Try to be part of the 5%. And then if you do find yourself there, then you're going to see how 95% of the industry is going to try to copy you. But the good news about that is that because they're going to be behind you trying to copy you, what you did last year, what you did last month, you're already on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's those are the type of artists that we look to and we say they're originators. They're the people that are innovators and they do things
Trendsetters.
as
Yeah.
yeah, they're the trendsetters because they're literally doing something that nobody else is doing at that time.
Yep.
And then everybody freaks out and then 95% of the people want to copy that.
Yeah.
But then you got the leg up because now you're just being you and you're
Yep.
on to the next thing doing what you think is cool and then hopefully you set another trend.
That's so true, and that's great advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think the goal for being an artist, especially a young artist,
Hmm.
should just be don't compare yourself to other people and just try to find your way of pulling together your favorite influences but making them yours,
Hmm.
and tell your story. If you're a type of artist that uses lyrics, tell your story, don't tell somebody else's story, you know. Don't take a trend. Don't go onto Twitter and search what popular hashtags are going on and try to write a song based on that.
Right.
Nobody's going to connect with that. And if they
Hmm.
do, they'll forget about it next month. So make music that is your story. Put you into your art, and then don't judge yourself. Don't judge that art. Just put it out. Don't try to make one song that's going to be the largest song of all time. Just make the song that you're feeling today
Hmm.
and put it out. Make it to the best of your ability, put it out, and then move on to the next one. Because I don't think any great song that has ever been a great song came from this place of, I'm going to write the greatest song ever. Like, yeah, we all have that
Yeah.
desire. Our ego has that desire, but no great song came from that place. It just came from a place of playfulness, of creativity, of trying something new
Yeah.
and then putting it out. And then the audience decided that it was the greatest song of all time.
Right.
You didn't make that decision.
Exactly.
So,
Like you can write great music, but you can't write a hit, right? Like a hit is impossible
no.
to write, impossible to predict. Yeah,
Yep. It
exactly.
really is.
Yeah.
And people get lost in this conversation, almost trying to turn their own brains into algorithms and, like, trying to copy this and copy that and put all this together. And, oh, people like that kind of word and people like that kind of beat. And then they copy, copy, copy. And then there's nothing original. You're
And they
not
forget the
authentic
art.
anymore.
They forget the art of the music. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So it is a long game. I'm not going to say that that will bring you immediate gratification.
Hmm.
Uh, but I do think over time, if you're trying to pursue this as a career or for your life, then I think that's the best lane of approach.
Yep. Totally agree. Kevin, I really appreciated this chat with you today. I love how open, honest you were, and you shared some really great tips that I personally, learned a lot from, and I know our community will too. So again, I want to thank you for
Awesome.
coming on. And I know you're putting out original music as we talked
Yeah.
about. If
Yep.
people haven't come across you or your music yet, where can they, check you out and follow you at?
Yeah. So, like I said, my artist name is Oneno, and it's a palindrome on the number one. So it's
Okay.
spelled Oneno.
And we got in the
If you're,
background there.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're watching the video podcast, I got my logo back there. But I'm everywhere online, especially you can find me on Spotify. I just dropped a new song last week that's called The Shattering. And it's
Yes.
this really awesome mashup of orchestral music and cyberpunk EDM music. So if you're out there and listening, go check out The Shattering. So yeah, and then also all of my social media, including my website, is I am Oneno. So you can find me on YouTube, I am Oneno, Instagram, and then my website is iamoneno.com.
And I'll have all those links in the description too.
Rad, yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate it. For those watching, let Kevin be a guiding light to you with his honest answers. You know that not everything is as it seems, but if you stay focused, stay determined, and work hard, you can achieve the goals you're after. Until next
Mhm.
time, take care and keep making music.